This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network. Presented by Hearthside Bank.
A massive rematch is awaiting the Lady Vols in the Sweet 16 as they prepare to face Texas once again this season. How the Lady Vols spent their time off to get back to the old version of themselves. We'll tell you next here on the Sports Source Digital Network. We're taking the channel on the road this week to the Food City Center, where the Lady Vols actually spent a ton of time getting back to the old version of themselves. Because if we're honest, the last couple of games, especially in the regular season, they looked unrecognizable. The last 3 or so games that we saw from them before the NCAA Tournament, they didn't look like the team that defeated UConn. They didn't look like the team that was in 1 or 2 possessions of defeating other top 10 opponents. They looked like that team in the round of 32 against Ohio State. So how did they get there? First, let's refresh our memory about how kind of crazy that game was. The Lady Vols were able to mount a beautiful 17-point lead. A lot of it was because their defense was feeding their offense, and they had, almost 5 turnovers, forced 5 turnovers in a row to help get them to that 17-point lead. And then all of a sudden, bucket by bucket, there was nothing the Lady Vols could do to stop Ohio State from going on their 19-2 run to tie the game at 56 apiece. A free throw in the next possession erased the lead and gave the Buckeyes a 1-point lead, 57-56. But this version of this team, they were able to answer. The version in the last 3 games prior to the NCAA tournament, the Lady Vols would not have had an answer. It started with Talaysia Cooper getting a steal and score and a 3-pointer from the top of the key, and then Ruby Whitehorn getting a really nice putback tip in to make it a 7-0 run. All of that is because they got back to playing team ball. As we noted last week, if you missed it, let this be a chance to hit that subscribe button. Ruby Whitehorn was really honest, and she talked about how this team was truly playing hero ball. They were not playing as a team. That's what Sarah Puckett tells me that they spent this time off practicing.
We've worked a lot on team ball. We've worked a lot on being very poised, staying level-headed, and just leaning on each other, rallying around each other to make sure that we can overcome anything. And I felt like that really showed tonight, and we just got to continue to do it.
That poise was most evident in their game against Ohio State. We didn't necessarily see too much of it after that first quarter against South Florida, but it was great to see it and see the proof of the growth they've made in that game against Ohio State. They were undefeated at home. I'm sure we saw the viral clip of Samara Spencer saying, "Not anymore." And it's because of what they were able to do that led to such great games earlier in the season, playing that team ball. That's what they really will need when they get ready for the Texas Longhorns, who also has some really impressive wins on this season, one of the top seeds in the tournament. And it's all about understanding where this team is better, and it's getting back to that team ball.
Having team strength, because it's something that we have been lacking in our past few games, and so the team strength is really what we draw from when we get down and when teams go on that run, and we had a lot of that today.
And where we see that confidence and that self-belief and composure most on the court really is sometimes after there are breakdowns on the court, and I'm sure a lot of it still happens as there are great runs going, because you don't want to look up at the scoreboard. And I still think that might be a little Achilles heel to this team, that when they do have nice sizable leads and they can sense that they've gone on big runs, they take a peek at that scoreboard and then they start to take a couple of plays off. I think that's what led to a decent start for Ohio State when they went on that 9-2, 20-2 run to take the lead once again in the game. But it's in those breakdowns specifically where they have a brief moment to get together and to regroup. That moment there really resets where they are in this game. They're not putting blame on anybody. They're really trying to be as productive as they can in the huddles. And it's what they're doing in those conversations that really shows the maturity and growth of this team.
Our tight huddles, we believed in one another. We didn't blame one another. We just moved on to the next play, and we fed energy into each other.
Aspects of their game like that now has them back in the Sweet 16. It was a tough round of 32 match in Columbus. They're now able to create new memories, and for some of these Lady Vols, it's memories that they've not been able to create even at their last stops. For players like Sarah Puckett and Tess Darby, they've been to the Sweet 16 a couple of times. This is now their 3rd trip wearing the orange and white going to the Sweet 16. But for players like Jewel Spear, Ruby Whitehorn, they've never had an experience like this. So too with Samara Spencer, who is now getting to experience this as a Lady Vol for the first time.
It It feels really good. I mean, you would have thought like towards the end of our regular season and then going into the SEC tournament that, you know, we really weren't going to be able to come in and compete. But I think that we showed after we had that break off and, you know, we regrouped and we got ourselves together that, you know, we're a really hard to beat team, and it's been showing.
Of course, they hope the road doesn't end there, as Tess Darby and Sarah Puckett really quickly emphasize. They say, you know, we're excited, but we want more. If they can continue to do what we saw against Ohio State and they don't peek up at the scoreboard, I really like their chances in the Sweet 16 against Texas. In fact, I'll be in Birmingham for that game. So after you watch this, please head over to my channel at Full Disclosure Pro. Give me a like and subscribe over there so you don't miss out on any of the immediate conversations following the Lady Vols Sweet 16 game. I'll actually also be in Indianapolis covering the men as well as they get ready for the third meeting with Kentucky.